Become a patron at www.patreon.com/Golden Era Bookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the golden era of bodybuilding. Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here. Today I'd like to address a very important question in regards to the frequency of training of Silver Era bodybuilders. Many people ask, how often did Silver Era bodybuilders train per week? Well, the answer that most people would normally answer is 3 times a week. And although many bodybuilders during the Silver Era did train full body routines 3 times a week, many broke from this mold. The short answer is, in Joe Weider's own words, there is no reliable guide for all bodybuilders to follow. It just doesn't exist. In an article written by Joe Weider, Joe details examples of 6 different Silver Era bodybuilders, each with their individual principles of training and frequencies. As Joe states in the article, there are advantages and disadvantages associated with each variation of the frequency of training, but there is no perfect routine for everyone. Each one of us represents a distinct individual problem, and no one can just point to any particular program and say, everyone follow that program. It is the best. No way, it just doesn't exist. These words definitely speak the truth, and therefore I thought I would share this article with you. And in doing so, I hope this article not only answers this very important question, but allows you to apply the principles behind each training frequency to your own training. Enjoy. Now, this article is actually very well written in regards to addressing that beginner who has been training for 6 months. Historically, Joe Weider points out that the 3 times a week schedule began in the early 1900s, especially with the Milo Barbell Company, who advocated their courses along with the barbell equipment that they used to sell, which of course these courses would advocate the training of full body routines 3 times a week. And although this system has its merits, as Joe Weider states, the beginner should probably follow such a system for about 6 months. And when reaching a point when they have developed their physiques and strength to a certain point where they can no longer be, I guess, regarded as a beginner, there are certain factors that need to be taken into consideration before electing a more advanced program. For example, what is your current body weight? This will indicate whether you need to reduce your body weight or whether you're fit enough to continue in gaining muscle. The other factors all have to do with your lifestyle, I guess, and that has to do with, for example, what do you work as? Is it a manual work, or is it mainly an office job where you actually have the opportunity to sit down and recuperate? What is your age? If you're young, of course, you can tackle much more stressful programs, much more difficult programs, and therefore have a greater potential to advance, because you can eventually train in much more advanced programs that an older person wouldn't be able to. For example, if you're already in your 40s, your training time is much more limited to a 20-year-old, for example. Although a 40-year-old can definitely still make significant gains. Another one, of course, is diet. Things like what are you actually eating during the day? These are very important questions for the beginner. Are you a heavy eater? Are you a light eater? These factors are very important in advancing your training, because if you want to increase the frequency, for example, of your training, or the intensity of your training, food is very, very important. The quality of food is very important. The recuperative power of the individual is also very, very important. All these factors really have to do with the individual. Your home life. Are you a parent, or are you a student living with your parents? These are all very important, and of course they differ between each individual, and that is the point that Joe Weider is trying to make in addressing all of these factors. And he rightly states, no one single program can benefit everybody. It just does not exist. What about your sleep patterns? Are you a heavy sleeper? Are you a light sleeper? Because this will obviously affect your recuperation between workouts. And one of the most important questions that he raises for the beginner is, what are your goals? Are you happy just being fit and having higher than average strength? Or do you want to be a physique champion? So all of these questions, all of these factors, which lead to questions really as to where you want to go after having done a 3 times a week, for example, training for 6 to 12 months. Where do you want to go? Do you want to be stronger? Do you want to be a physique champion? Or are you just happy to be fit and healthy? These questions will all affect those future decisions. And now, continuing with the article, Joe Weider now gives the examples of very accomplished weightlifters and bodybuilders of that existed during the Silver Era, and actually compares their principles behind their training and behind their frequency. So let's get straight into that. The first example that Joe Weider gives in this particular article is of Phil COURTOIS, I think COURTOIS or COURTOIS, I don't know how to say it, a weightlifter actually back then, and also physique star in the Silver Era. Here's a great early volume 6, number 5, issue number 5 of Ironman magazine, showing his physique. You can see he has more of an Olympic weightlifting physique. This guy actually trained for maximum power, and therefore Joe Weider gives this example of this particular bodybuilder slash weightlifter as an example of a program for a person who now wants to develop maximum power. Let's say an Olympic weightlifter or a power lifter, or even just someone that wants to reach their maximum lifting capabilities. He actually recommends training only twice a week under this style of training. Very intense, where you would be using near limit poundages, very reminiscent of dinosaur training, which actually recommends training once every 5 days, and even later, once every week. Because what is recommended here under this type of severe training is lots of sets with low repetitions during each set. So you're basically performing no more than 3 sets, no more than 3 reps, and maybe up to 6 to 8 sets of this kind of work. It is absolutely physically and mentally fatiguing. Joe Weider states, it's not just physically fatiguing for your muscles, tendons, and ligaments are heavily worked, but he actually stresses the mental capacity needed to undergo this kind of intense training week after week is truly devastating to the mind, right? It really does require a lot of good rest and good food, and also, as he states, a stress-free life, because you really are pushing yourself physically and mentally, and therefore you do need lots of recuperation, which is why he only recommends at an absolute maximum training twice a week in this kind of with this kind of goal of achieving maximum power. Joe Weider gives the next example as Abe Goldberg, for example, a bodybuilder from the Silver Era who at the time of the 50s was either in his late 20s or very early 30s. Abe Goldberg was well known for training 3 times a week, a very heavy workout nonetheless, 3 hours in each workout. So I don't think that the 3 times a week workout was anything easy. No, not at all. 3 hours to even 4 hours each workout. He recommends this kind of training, which is full body routines, a very heavy full body routine for those with fast recuperative abilities and those that don't necessarily need to go into competition, but may be thinking about it. And so we're talking about 20 and 30-year-olds here who want to achieve a decent physique, who may actually want to eventually compete. And for those that wish to compete, once they have sufficient bulk attained in their physiques, he would then recommend upping the training 5 days a week, especially before the contest, anywhere between 2 weeks or even a week before the contest. At least back in the day, I know that nowadays you would have to probably take a lot longer to prepare for a contest, but at least back then, when definition wasn't as important as it is nowadays, it was only recommended to prepare about 2 weeks prior to contest, where you would have many light workouts in between these full body routines that were performed 3 times a week. And for these workouts, for all of these workouts, actually, for preparing for competition, when you would switch to a 5-day-a-week workout, you would actually focus more on higher reps, and of course higher reps for more sets for more definition. Joe Weider also recommends for the much older athlete, I guess, into their 40s and even 50s, to maintain using a 3 times a week routine, a 3 times a week full body routine, such as Barton Horvath. Barton Horvath, shown here, was actually during the 40s, had a very, very impressive physique. Sorry, not during, well, actually during the 40s he had a fantastic physique, but then during the 50s when he came back, he was actually now in his early 40s, and he maintained his physique using a 3 times a week full body routine. And this is the recommendation that Joe Weider has for those older athletes, those in their mature years, to train 3 times a week on a full body routine. If you wished, some light work in between. And again, this kind of workout is suitable for older men, for more mature men in their 40s and 50s. Now, for the person that wishes to advance into becoming a bodybuilder, at least a natural bodybuilder, Joe Weider gives the example of Clarence Ross, who, of course, like many Silver Era bodybuilders, used to started off and trained with 3 times a week bodybuilding full body routine. But Clarence Ross is an example of a bodybuilder that then realized, for example, that he couldn't give it his all during those 2 to 3 hours of training. Right? If you've reached a level where, for example, your bench press is over 300 pounds, your squat is over 400 pounds, your deadlift is over 500 pounds, you can imagine that your rows, your curls, you're probably doing all these exercises, heavy dips, heavy chins, with quite a significant amount of poundage. Now, you're trying to maintain that for 3 to 4 hours. That's going to be a pretty hard call. And so he recommends, like Clarence Ross, performing 4 times a week a workout that is consisted of a upper and lower body split, where each split, that is your upper and lower body, would be trained twice a week. For example, the upper body would be trained on Monday and on Thursday, and your lower body would be trained on Tuesday and on Friday. This would allow you to train for 2 to 3 hours up to that point, up to 2 to 3 hours, with very heavy poundage, and therefore would allow you to give maximum effort in each workout. Imagine having to do 300 plus pound bench press, 2 to 300 pound repetition row, and then having on top of all of that to do deadlifts and squats, etc., etc. It's very taxing, and you wouldn't be able to give it your all. That's the whole idea behind splitting the upper and lower body, so you can actually use heavy poundage for each of these body parts. And he recommends on top of that to specialize 1 day a week on lagging body parts. For example, this could be performed on the Wednesday or on the Saturday, and like lagging body parts could be anything, such as your arms, your calves, your forearms, etc. As a second last example, Joe Weider gives the example of Leo Robert. Leo Robert was a Canadian bodybuilder and was known for his high frequency training. He used to train 5 to 6 times a week, and we're talking using very, very heavy poundages. Although he was in his 20s, he recommends this particular type of training where you would be using heavy poundage 5 to 6 times a week for an advanced bodybuilder who's in their 20s. He would suggest that it would be ideal for a person who has superhuman recuperative powers. You could, of course, be training on an upper and lower body split, each split again being trained twice a week, again using heavy poundages, and specializing in any lagging body parts for once to twice a week as well. Of course, this split could be trained also 3 times a week. These are just examples, of course. But again, the most important thing here is that the example of Leo Robert's training frequency is recommended for those who have truly superhuman recuperative powers and are young enough to actually withstand this kind of training. And you have to be fairly advanced as a bodybuilder to be able to do this kind of training. Joe Weider gives the final example of truly the epitome of superhuman powers. I mean, he gives Reg Park, of course, as the example. Reg Park was known for his insane recuperative capabilities. I mean, this guy was a true superhuman, a superman, so to speak. Reg Park is known to have trained at least 10 times a week at some times during his training. He would train to achieve 10 times a week alone, he would train twice a day, with training sessions lasting for at least an hour, if not 1.5 hours each. Training twice a day, he would train 5 days a week. I mean, it does take a superhuman effort to be able to do this. He recommends this kind of training if you have incredible recuperative powers and are a very advanced bodybuilder in your 20s. Again, each workout now, we're not talking about upper and lower body splits. We're talking about a bodybuilder who has gone beyond that, who, again, is using incredibly heavy poundages and cannot afford to use these poundages without sacrificing his power or his strength for other body parts. And therefore, he recommends this kind of training for those that have reached such a level that are ready to train each individual body part separately. It's kind of weird because nowadays you see so many young kids going, oh, today I'm training biceps. And, I just kind of look and think, well, mate, you're using, 5 to 10 kilos on your biceps. You really should be thinking of doing a full body routine. I mean, this kind of training of splitting each body part, as you can see, done by Reg Park, requires to have reached such a level of advanced bodybuilding that you really can't rely on an upper and lower body split anymore. And that's the point that Joe Weider tries to make. These workouts, training each individual body part, Reg Park would give his absolute all. We're talking 1 to 1.5 hours each session, right? And at age 21, as an example, Reg Park did nothing else but eat, sleep, and train. This has been confirmed to me by John Park as well. That's all that Reg Park did. He lived bodybuilding. He ate, slept, and trained, and he would train without exaggeration. Again, confirmed by John Park, up to 3 times a day. Just think about it. We're talking about a man who could bench press 500 pounds. We're talking about such a level of strength that imagine being able to do that. Would you have the strength to then go on and do a 600-pound squat or a 700-pound deadlift, to do a full workout for your legs, a full workout for your back after having blitzed your chest with 500 pounds? I mean, we're talking superhuman strength that requires, splitting each body part. That's the point that Joe Weider is trying to make in this particular example of Reg Park. That you have to have reached such an advanced level that splitting each body for each training session is absolutely necessary to truly train that area properly. He gives Reg Park as that example of a true advanced bodybuilder who's reached superhuman powers. We're talking a real high level elite championship level as given by Reg Park. If you're interested in learning more about Silver Era bodybuilding techniques, I suggest you get to my website www.goldenerabookroom.com, where you'll find many titles from Reg Park, Steve Reeves, and many others, such as rib cage and chest development, Reg Park's original 5x5 routines, and how to develop your waistline from Steve Reeves, how to develop broad shoulders, again from Steve Reeves, all available on my website www.goldenerabookroom.com. So I do hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and I hope that I have, using Joe Weider's awesome article. I have to admit, this was an excellent article written by Joe Weider. I hope I've answered that very important question as to how often did Silver Era bodybuilders train per week. A lot of people, I have to admit, talk negatively about Joe Weider, and I know the reasons why. And although I try to always focus on the positive the positive things that people did, I truly think that when I look at Joe Weider's articles from the 40s and from the 50s, I can't help but realize that back then he actually did have a lot of good things to say, and therefore, at least in my eyes, he was a true pioneer in bodybuilding history. And having said that, I think that the article, in this particular article, he truly shows what he was doing back then. I admit that during the 60s and 70s, when bodybuilding started taking a turn, especially with the advent of steroids, it took a very negative turn to where it has gone nowadays. But at least back then, and in this article, it's very obvious that Joe Weider does his research, and he always talked about that. He was always with bodybuilders. He was, unlike Bob Hoffman, very pro bodybuilding. He would spend time with all these bodybuilders and train with them and try and understand what they were doing, and would share this information in these magazines such as Your Physique, Muscle Power, and Muscle Builder. And that's why I thought I would share this particular article, because believe it or not, Joe Weider truly spoke some truths back then. He had some very good things to say, and I thought very valuable things to say. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and my little rant. If you've enjoyed watching the video, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't to the Golden Era Bookworm. Leave me your comments, and thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work and my research in physical culture and bodybuilding, please donate via PayPal. You can become a patron. You can visit my website, www.goldenerabookworm.com, for to print books and courses. And of course, email me if you wish to pass on your memorabilia, your bodybuilding relics, or if you wish to collaborate. And I do hope again that you've enjoyed watching this video, and that it can help you achieve Silver Era heights, such as the wonderful physique, for example, of Steve Reeves, who was well known for training 3 times a week, although he did incorporate other forms of methods in his training too, which I guess I should also talk about in future videos. Anyway, that's it for me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm. Bye for now. To take full advantage of my affiliation with NSP Nutrition and Old School Labs, please visit their respective websites and use codes GUB20 or Bookworm12 to get a discount off their selected products. And for an entertaining look at the history of bodybuilding's supplement industry, I would highly recommend watching Subs the Movie, which I have collaborated in, available at Amazon Prime and Vimeo.